This section would be based on the blog of Kelly Waters. She calls it 10 Agile Principles, but I would rather call it concepts, because if I call it the Agile Principles, then that kind of has a conflict with the 12 principles as interpreted by majority. However, I find this 10 key points raised by her as very important if you want to be successful in implementing Agile. First, and probably foremost, would be active user involvement. I cannot overemphasize this point. It's imperative. If you do not have an active user or product owner who would work with you closely, who would inspect the output from each iteration, give their input, and help the team identify, learn, and grow with it, it would be very difficult. In fact, we have seen several projects which are not so successful or was unable to produce the best result despite having a great team and following rest of the Agile principles, just because the product owner was too busy to provide enough time to the team. And even though he was ready to write down the requirement or spend a specific time in the week, but not really getting involved on a regular basis, on a as needed by the team basis, did not help in achieving the ideal output that you would want in a agile project. So yes, the first thing, you need to talk to your client, your product owner, and be very sure that the person they're assigning as product owner has the time, is ready to be involved, and provide all the feedback, all the guidance that the team needs to make the project successful. The second key point, the empowerment of the team. Now, this is a mind shift from the previous concepts where there was a hierarchical structure and the project manager kind of assigning tasks and defining who needs to do what by what time frame. In an agile team, the choices are left with the team, and they decide together which road to take to be most successful, to attain the goals of the project successfully. So empowering the team is critical, and the team should also be ready to make these decisions as a team towards the success of the project. The third point is regarding, let's say, what used to be called change management. In fact, the concept of Agile is that the change request itself probably is the most valuable inputs that would help in succeeding or help in making the project successful. So requirements, the real ones, emerge and evolve as software is developed. So as each iteration happens, as output happens, the users come in contact with the software, they realize how they would want to use it, what would be a better way to go about it, which are the more valuable parts, which are the not so valuable parts. So unlike in the traditional project management approach where the team is resistant to change because they are bound by the three triple constraint of schedule, time, and budget, and because the plan is made ahead, they kind of resist as much as possible change requests because those are bound to delay and increase the cost. Whereas in Agile, you look forward to getting more inputs from users as the initial iterations happen, as you build the initial output. You want them to use it and tell more of which ones they need and which one maybe is not so important. So this process is quite a shift in how things are done, and change is good, and change is accepted and adapted for the success of the project. The concept of requirement is also quite different. So in the traditional project management, you try to capture all the requirements upfront, as much possible, as much detailed possible. You try to capture it and get a sign off from your users so that you can try to predict that when all of this can be done and the budget that it would take. While the requirement in Agile is what you call barely sufficient, meaning you don't actually want to make it comprehensive. You want it as a talking point. You want the requirement, the user story, to be something that can be the talking point between the team and the product owner in defining what is in his mind, what he wants to achieve when he said that story. So it's actually better not to have it over defined or very thoroughly written down, because that kind of cuts down the verbal communication, which is very important in the Agile concept. So that's why barely sufficient requirement doesn't mean that you are not going to get into the detail, but it talks about what you wrote down to be barely enough so that it can be discussed and understood better. Elephant eating. So the concept of this is basically around how do you deal with something huge and without getting caught in the size and the enormity of the whole task. You start chewing off small bits at a time so that the most important parts can be tackled in the very beginning, and as you continue on, you meet the goal of completing this huge task. Now this concept is basically, sometimes some teams might misinterpret Agile being something that you really sprint through very fast and continue running fast with it. But the point of Agile is not necessarily the speed, but having a sustainable speed. So the team needs to achieve ideal velocity, speed at which it will be delivering, but not only for one. So you don't want the team to be working over overtimes and weekends and stuff. You want them to have a rhythm in which they can consistently deliver quality output for a very long period of time. You don't want them to be exhausted, burned out, etc. So yes, it has to be fast, but at a sustained, balanced pace which can be maintained for very long period of time. Now the concept of done means done is very important to understand. So even though we are going to do bit by bit, it's always important to realize that when you deliver an output, It's not just a part that would be further tested down the line and so forth, but it's something that you are producing for the users to possibly start using it after you are done, meaning it should be complete and stand alone on its own and produce the desired business value it's supposed to without the other parts that has not yet been developed. So it's important while writing the user story, while building it, and while delivering it, to keep in mind it's an increment that can be utilized, can be shipped to the users as soon as possible. Now, you must be aware of this 80-20 rule. This is something that is always true by nature, meaning in any system, about 20% of the features are the most valuable and produces 80% of the value for the system. So there has been some studies that shows that, like in Microsoft Word, average people do not use more than 8% of what Word can do. So, it's amazing that there are thousands of man hours that has been put in. However, there's a very small fraction which most people use. Now, we can't say for sure if Microsoft would have just invested on that 8% or 10% of the Office Word, would that be as successful as it is today? But that's a topic of a separate discussion. However, it's important to note that those 8% of the features are the most important to average users. So if we were to build Word in an agile manner under the agile principle, you would have focused on purely those 8% or rather the 20% of the software to be delivered as soon as possible. So average users across would have been able to start using Word and probably never feel the requirement for the other parts. And doesn't mean that we are not going to do that, but the 20% first approach where you deliver the maximum value to the user quickly and upfront, and then continue on with the others as needed. Now, testing used to be a concept where the software was completely built and then the testing phase took up. But in Agile, it's built from the right from the beginning. So when you write the user story, you already identify what are the criteria that would basically define if that story is successful. So it's basically identifying the test criteria right while you're writing the story. And along the way, while building, different key automated testing methods are built in so that as you proceed, the test is integrated into the development approach. So by the time it finishes, you get a product which is stable enough to be already implemented along with the rest. Now, this is the last key point about collaboration, cooperation, and communication between team members. One of the key difference in Agile is breaking down the very specified roles, like it used to be that someone is a project manager, someone is an architect and is focused purely on designing it, while there's someone who's a front-end developer, who's a back-end developer, or a tester. That doesn't exist anymore in an Agile team. So everyone would have a certain area of expertise, but they are more focused in the total output and help each other out as needed to make the best of the iteration. So it's it's no more like silos that used to be, but it's more of a flat group which works together, which collaborates together and discusses along the way to make sure that they can produce an output that's most valuable to the user without passing the ball from one person to the others. So those were the 10 key concepts, key principles that Waters wrote, and I hope you found a lot of them to be useful so far in your own agile practice and those that you do moving forward. Thank you.